We are just about 10 lines into on page AyinBase 10. The line begins with the word mi-ein. What we have been explaining is that just as Adam here below is a Bria Yesh mi-ein, and Yesh mi-ein means really a novel creation, and yet we are referring to it as B'Tselem. We're saying that it has the quality that is B'Tselem Adam Ha'Ayin. He approximates, he represents Adam Ha'Ayin. Similarly, the Adam kadmon, which is called Adam the Bria the clothes, we discussed it in class several times. Adam kadmon, the word kadmon has a very special meaning. Kadmon does mean the first. The first is Rishon. Kadmon means pristine. That which was before anything was created. That's meant kadmon.
Different from original? Same as
original.
Pristine, original?
Yeah.
Not first.
The word Adam is a creation. A kadmon means the original being, the original presence, which is before creation. And he was saying Adam kadmon. That this is the big dilemma over here. We explain that it's Adam, even though it's Adam, it's also kadmon. How is it kadmon? Because this Adam was perceived in Ayin Sof, in the kadmon Chol Dumim, the real pristine reality. So we're saying, the line begins with mi-ein. So we're saying that just as the Adam Milmato is also a great distance between him and Adam Ha'Ayin of Atzilus, the 10 spheres. Nevertheless, we're saying that it's Tzelem. Similarly, the Adam kadmon is also a creation. Adam also a Bria. It's called Bria the clothes. And therefore it is extremely distant from Ayin Sof. As a matter of fact, it's more distant from Ayin Sof than Adam Shalamata from Atzilus. Nevertheless, it still retains this quality that it's called B'Tselem Elokim. Now he continues on the middle of that line. Obevadai, surely, shein ho'inyonim mishtavim. That these two principles, these two inyonim that we are comparing now, are not really equal. Comparing the Adam Shalamato, the human being here below, as he comes from Adam Ha'Ayin from Atzilus, compared, and then we say the Adam kadmon, Adam the clothes from Ayin Sof, from Atzmus. They're not the same. They're not the same thing. Why? The benish mas ha'adam, because in the soul of man, this here below, nimshach is drawn mimhus b'bchinas Adam Ha'Ayin. We actually have from the mhus, we have of the aspect of Adam Ha'Ayin. In what way do we have the mhus of Adam Ha'Ayin? Adam Ha'Ayin is 10 spheres of Atzilus, and Adam Shalamata is also 10 spheres. It's different level of spheres, but nevertheless there is a certain similarity in the structure of Adam Ha'Ayin and the Adam Shalamata. Whereas this aspect of Ak, we say that this is also B'Tselem from Ayin Sof. There is not of the mahus, of the quality of Ayin Sof itself. There is no similarity at all between Ak, Adam kadmon, and Ayin Sof Ashizatzmus. As we mentioned many times, that there's no way to understand this in but just to give it, so to speak, a sharp statement. Atzmus is not coming into being. Adam kadmon comes into being. He was perceived and then he came into being. So that itself puts him in totally different categories. And therefore, in Adam kadmon there is not of the element of Ayin mahus. Mahus of Ayin. How can it be mahus of Ayin if this is something which came into being and Ayin does not come into being? They're in different presences. Or bekom came and yet still who b'tzelem elikim. It still is has the quality that it can be called tzelem elikim. How does it have b'tzelem elikim if it's so distant? Which means sheyesh bozeh, that there is within it mibchinas oirin soif kadmon l'chol agdum. There's an aspect of oirin soif in Adam kadmon. There is an aspect of oirin soif which is kadmon l'chol agdum. So we'll go through these couple of lines. We'll get the point which Rebbe wants to explain and then try to discuss it a little bit. There is of the aspect of Eir Yisrael, which is kadmon l'chol agdum, which is the precedent, which precedes everything. We have discussed this many times. We always bring this up again and again and again. But the Rambam says the first principle is to know that there is a first being. The principle of first being is extremely difficult for us. To demonstrate how difficult it is to conceive a first being, we demonstrated by saying that the world, in the principle, in essence, is dark. The sun comes and makes it light. That principle of having light that comes in and that illuminates, we can understand, because on a primary state, a primary state would be darkness. This is how we understand the world. Primary state would be dark, and then light has to come in from someplace and illuminate it. Then we come and say, no, the sun is an etzem behiri. Sun is an essence that's bohir. Etzem behiri is something which does not really strike our seichel in any kind of comprehensible manner. Light is a positive thing. Anything positive has to come into being. Has to be actively brought into. It cannot be fundamental. It cannot be basic. And yet we say by the sun that it's etzem behiri, which means it's basic. The same thing in a much higher level is the neshama, the life of the neshama. Life to us is something which manifests by certain activity, by experience of life. It's a manifest presence. It's not an essential presence. You say no, but the neshama is essence life. Essence by us is dark, which means it's lifeless. If it has life, something makes it life. The neshama is essence life. All this is just to so to speak, to tease our mind, to trigger our mind to understand, to turn to in different environment, totally. Now, when you talk kadmon means that which is in essence what it is. Nothing brings it to be what it is. Then we say there is Ayin, which is kadmon l'chol agdum, which is the pristine of all the absolute pristine. Then we say there is Adam kadmon. Adam kadmon came into being, and yet it retains a quality of kadmon, of kadmon element. How can something that came into being have an element of kadmon, kadmon quality? The answer is, this is what we were discussing all the time. The answer is that the one that conceptualized this bria, this Odom kadmon, is this concept of it, and it was born in the kadmon itself. Therefore, it represents kadmon quality.
Again, because the one who conceptualized it
Is a kadmon.
The one who conceptualized it is or Ein Sof.
Right. It's Ayin Sof, which is kadmon.
And so he embedded that quality within the creation.
Within his creation, because this is his concept. It's born within this Ayin Sof. So therefore, the kadmon element came along with this concept. This is why it's called Odom kadmon. This is what we're saying over here. It does not have a mahus of Ayin Sof. It has of the quality of kadmon. It has a quality of, it has an element of kadmon. This is the reason why it's called Odom kadmon. The Odom stam, because it's impossible to describe it and to refer to it as Odom plain. Why? Since that there was no Odom before him, and therefore the term Odom plain cannot be applied to him. Why? There was no previous Odom. Asher name Ashu B'Tzalmi. There's no previous Odom for whom we will be able to say that this Odom is B'Tzalem of that previous Odom. Because one of the things of Odom is, they say Odom is whatever Odom is, and the word Odom represents also Adam el-Elyon, that he is similar to that which preceded him. There is no preceding Odom. So therefore he cannot be called Odom. Stam. Ki Ein Sof kadmon. What preceded this Odom is Ein Sof kadmon. The Ein Sof the kadmon, not another Odom of a higher level, but Ein Sof kadmon. Al kei nikro ak. This is why it's called Odom kadmon. The hoirois, to tell us Shuhu Bechinas Odom, that this is a type of Odom, all of the Machshavas Ayin Sof kadmon, that entered the thought of Ayin Sof kadmon. Now, this Odom is reflective of kadmon, not reflective of another Odom. Odom Hilamato is reflective of Odom Ha'elyon. But Odom kadmon is reflective of the kadmon that conceptualized that Odom. So his similarity to that which above him gives him the title of kadmon, not the title of Mitzelah, of Odom Mitzelah.
The rest of the Bria wasn't conceived in kadmon?
Right. That's right. The Bria begins from the Odom, and then everything is clear from that. We said Odom includes everything. Therefore, this Odom kadmon is B'Tzalmoi, the B'Tzalm of kadmon, of kadmon Odom of Ayin Sof, Kaviyochel. Kaviyochel means, so to speak, there is not Tzelem in kadmon, and therefore it cannot be something as B'Tzelem. But nevertheless, we refer to it as Salmin. He explained, which means that even though Ein Areich, that he is totally in an extreme distance, no comparison at all, there is no similarity. Ukmei Bria, and it is like a new creation. And even more. Kanal, as we explained before, there is a greater distance from Adam Kadmon to Ayin Soif than the Adam human being Yivilot from Adam Ayin. Mikomokem yet still Harehu B'Tzalmoi. It still correctly is B'Tzalmoi in his Tzalim. Sheyesh boy mibchinas, because this Adam has of the quality of Ayin Soif kadmon chol akdumim. He has of the aspect of kadmon chol, that's what B'Tzalmoi. What aspect does he have? That he also has an aspect of kadmon, has a kadmon quality. He has a kadmon quality. What is a kadmon quality? Again, when I say what is quality, kadmon quality, it's seeming like intending to explain what that means. There is no such thing as explaining what kadmon quality is. But in the context that we're saying, what do you mean by kadmon? And then we say there's a kadmon that is a creation which also has a kadmon quality. What does that mean? So we explain that one principle in kadmon is, just as we said before, that by us altogether to conceptualize light itself as an essential presence, just like darkness by us, is also something which is impossible for us to comprehend. What is the kadmon element in our mindset? There's one principle in our mindset, that whatever we encounter, whatever we see, whatever we conceptualize, it warrants, as you said the other day, but warrants, it justifies to us the question, where does it come from? When you ask the question, where does this come from? It is not to the fact that you don't understand what this is. On the contrary, because you understand what this is, that's why you ask where it's coming from. The more you understand this, the more you know it's coming from something. That's why you ask. Kadmon. If you really knew what you're talking about kadmon, the whole question where it comes from is inapplicable. Doesn't warrant it. So this is what we're saying, that Adam kadmon, this bria, like a clovis, Adam kadmon, even though it's a bria, but it's a bria that was conceptualized in the kadmon, and therefore the kadmon element was imbued in it, and therefore looking at this bria, the question of where it's coming from does not apply. Doesn't even warrant it. If you understood what you're talking about, you wouldn't ask where it's coming from. That's the point. So we're repeating this all the time. And now this becomes the focal point of discussion. It's a very clearly a very deep concept, a very intellectual concept. Despite the fact that it's extremely deep intellectual concept, we are learning this even though we are not very deep intellectual thinkers. It doesn't bother us. But what's the point? The point is that our emunah is also inexplicable. In other words, the reason we have access to this, we're able to even to talk about it, is because in our emunah we have that quality, where we don't ask question, we can't ask where it's coming from.
And that's why you can relate to an intellectual concept that you're not
kadmon.
shaykh to.
Right. That's right. That's why you can not saying that's why you can relate to something which is not in a worldly intellect. It's an neshama intellect. If not for neshama, this is what I'm constantly, talking about. World intellect is not intellect at all. This is instinct. Intellect is a neshama quality, and it is extremely important, extremely significant, and extremely meaningful, valuable, and important, imperative that we be able to relate to this. Otherwise, any question in emunah shakes us up. The world is constantly asking, how do you know? Where does it come from? How do you know? You have this proof or I have the other proof? Understanding this principle that emunah does not have a sort of precedent, and that's exactly how we experience it, then we don't get shaken up by all these Nasha questions. On the contrary, we tell them, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Life is not a created entity. Life is the source of everything. God is the source of everything. Not as the world perceives that darkness is the source. Light is the source. Okay?
So maybe I didn't understand. Did you say emunah doesn't have a source?
Emunah, right? Emunah does not have a source. Emunah is not based on, I know this because I know this. I just know this, period. Therefore, now from this whole discussion, we're coming back to the pinnacle of our discussion. This is what we actually started with. Ayin soif. That was the original question. The hagam shehu bein hareichel gabe atzmus. That although Ayin soif is not at all in proximity to atzmus, ein hareich, it's incomparable to atzmus. According to what we explained earlier in this mimer, then actually the comparison between Atzmus and Ein Sof is like a bria, like a new creation, because the Ein Sof is not part of Atzmus. How does Ein Sof come from Atzmus? By a decision to have it. It's a creation. So it's Be'er Ben Arech. Nevertheless, that Ayin Sof qualifies to be referred to as Surah Atzmus. Let's translate the word Surah Atzmus now that we're coming to this bottom line. Okay. Surah Atzmus, we discussed it originally when we first touched it. This is a book, and it consists of X number of pages. Everything that's in this book could be designed in a totally different form than the book. It could be a scroll. It can be interleaving pages. It could be one huge page that allows for all this writing in one page. There's no imperative reason why this should look like a book in the way that it's done. The reason it is in this format is for some other ulterior, it's not in order to contain this. It's in this form in order to be able to utilize it in a very practical way. It's not. It doesn't originate from what's inside here. Therefore, this is not a tzura atzmis. It's an imposed tzura. It's a form that, in order to bring this content in a form that you can be able to use it, you have it in this form. On the other hand, let's say metal, steel, gold. The gold looks the way it is because it is gold. Its form is not imposed upon it in order to, I want to have a watch that looks like gold, I make the gold look like that. This is gold. Gold has a presence, has a certain quality, and it also has an appearance. That appearance is part and parcel of its quality. Not only the appearance, its color and so forth, but even the appearance, the manner that it actually represents itself. It's a metal, it's a soft metal, it has a certain qualities. All that is part and parcel of what gold is. This is called tzura atzmis. The term tzura, in general, applies to that aspect of this thing, of gold, for example, that lends itself to be seen and appreciated by someone outside of it. Tzura means the external view. This external view in gold is referring to gold itself. The external view of this mi-ein that looks like a book is not part of the mi-ein. This is something which is made for our convenience. But the external view of gold is gold. It's called tzura atzmis. Now, AyinBase does not have a presence. Anything that makes it present, makes it seen and identifiable externally, is something that's been created. So how can you have a tzura atzmis? All its tzura is for the purpose that outside you should be. Now, all its tzura is like a book. It's made to be able to recognize it, but it's not part of the AyinBase. And yet we say, not part of atzmus. Atzmus is intangible totally. Yet we say that AyinBase is tzura atzmis of atzmus.
Or in sof is tzura atzmis.
That's what we said all along, right? And they explained, how can it be tzura atzmis and something that has no relationship to anything outside of itself in the beginning? So they say it's called a tzura atzmis because this is what's called the first tzura. Was made. If there should be a thought of presenting itself, this is how it will be presented. That's what's called a tzura atzmis.
That's sufficient to call it atzmi?
That's sufficient for atzmis. Because it's representative of itself.
Well, no. It's not. We just said if it was going to present itself, then this would be how. But it's not directly representative of itself like the gold example. It's the case of if he wants to show himself, he takes that form, but it's not him himself.
But if we say that if he would show himself, it would be that form, not in order to accommodate your eyes, but in order to show himself. That means that this is Tzuratu, this is a true presentation of himself. It's true, it is not imperative, he can be without the Tzur, and he's primarily without the Tzur. But nevertheless, there is that in what's called Tzur Atzmis. And this is what's called, this is the Oirin Seif. What is Oirin Seif? Okay, I mean, in the Kotel, Oirin Seif for a moment, you'll see that this is how that this is meaningful to say that. There is oil, for instance, the sunlight is bright. Why is the sunlight bright? Because the sun is brightness. That's why it's bright. It's truly representative of what the sun is. But there, the sun is inherently bright. And therefore this light is really representative of the sun. The sun could not even withdraw that representation. Atzmus does not have an inherent presentation. But how would you present Atzmus if you wanted to? You would present it in Ein Sof. How would you present the undefined reality, unlimited reality, undefined reality, in Ein Sof form? That's what it's called Oirin Sof. Oirin Sof is Tzura Atzmus. Even though Atzmus does not have Tzura, because Atzmus does not stand for being recognized. Doesn't need to be recognized. Nevertheless, if Atzmus decided and wanted to show itself, it would show itself in this form of Ein Sof.
If it wanted to, it would show itself in this form. And is that a revelation, or is that assigned by us?
No, that's not defined by us. That's defined by him. If Atzmus decided to be Misgala, how is Atzmus? What kind of gilui would capture Atzmus aspect? This and the aspect of Atzmus.
Why is Oren Sof the best capture or the best representation of Atzmus?
I don't know if you say.
I should say.
Yeah. I'm saying that's why.
I don't know. It feels a little arbitrary. I don't get
no.
The
I'm
best
explaining it to you.
representation.
You have to think. It's not arbitrary because you don't. Whatever we talk, I always want that you should think for yourself.
Yeah.
What is Atzmus? The first thing, Atzmus is limitless. It has no. It's undefinable. The reason it's undefinable is because it's without limit. So if Atma should be represented, if it should be represented, how would, in limitlessness.
Okay. Or Ein Sof, light without end, is the best.
Without form.
Light without form is the best representation.
Which includes Koch drawing.
I'm sorry?
Which includes Koch ability, Koch Gvul. Includes both.
Here, I believe we'll call it.
They say that the sun is.
Let's not confuse it more. Let's get through for one point at a time. So this is the pshat that this is called Tzura Atzmis. It's not a Tzura Atzmis. Why is it not a Tzura Atzmis? Because Atzmis does not have a Tzura altogether. It doesn't need to be Nizgala. The sun has to be Nizgala.
Right.
The Neshama has to be Nizgala.
Yeah.
Atzmis does not need to be Nizgala. It's not part of its makeup to be Nizgala. Part of the makeup of the sun is brightness, which has a Gilui element. Whether it's concealed or not concealed, it's up to the sun. But there's Gilui element in the sun itself, the brightness.
Yeah.
The Neshama, there's a Gilui element, it's called life.
Right.
Even if the neshama can choose not to give life.
Right.
But inherently in the neshama there is an element of a gilui.
Yeah.
That's why the gilui is atzur atzmus. In atmos there is no element of gilui inherent.
In Atmos there is no inherent, yes, there's no inherent qualities.
There's no inherent gilui element. In other words, this thing should be nisgala. There's nothing there to be nisgala.
Right. Okay. So how do we come to
So therefore, there is no tzur atzmis in the same fashion as we say in the sun and the neshama. But nevertheless, if the atzmis chose to be nisgala, what gilui would capture the union of atzmis? There's no way you can capture the union of atzmus at the level where it cannot be misgala, where it's not interested in misgala. But if you would put atzmus in a gilui, the only way you could put atzmus in gilui is Ein Sof.
And Choshech Ein Sof wouldn't.
Excuse me?
Choshech Ein Sof wouldn't be.
Choshech also, yeah, Choshech. That's Oil Ein Sof is Choshech.
Or Ein Sof is Choshech?
It's Choshech.
The infinite light is the infinite darkness?
Yeah. The Ein Sof is Choshech. He doesn't make light.
Okay.
The oil, the term over here is not illumination.
Right.
It's brightness per se. Or the effect of his presence with oil. It's not illumination. Like we said, a person buys a house, and as soon as he enters the house, he fills his aura, his presence fills the entire house. This is called oil. This house is not owned by a person. It's not just four walls. It's a living home. It's a human home. Right? How? Because a person, his presence is present everywhere. Is it illuminating the house? It's not affecting it. But there is the human presence in it. That's what's called oil. Oil in this case means the present, the gilui. It's not darkness versus light. That's why it is called tzur atzmus.
So we're saying about the home is what's not illuminating?
The person owns a home. Does it make you able to see the table? Right? But there's effect. You say the human oil is present. And there's an effect of the fact that it's not because it illuminates. When you come into somebody's home, whether you could see your way around, you can't see around, you know that this is somebody's home. No brightness, no visibility associated with this. So this is the principle. Okay, so this is what we're saying, and 2 lines from the end of that paragraph. The Kolma came. So even though the oil is safe, we have an atmos in mi-ein, and it's like a bria. Why is it called a bria? Because it's volitional. He decided he doesn't have oil otherwise. He doesn't have any element of gilui in atmos. Atmos has no presence. Now we're saying that presence makes it present in the world, makes it known. It doesn't. The Kolma came out, nevertheless, it qualifies for tzur atzmus. For although it is not a gilui from the etzem, as we said before, because it's gilui from the etzem would mean that it automatically comes from the etzem. It does not automatically come from the etzem. It comes from the etzem by decision, by his will. Being that this is the first surah, Hainu Hagil Horishin. What is Horishin in this country means Hagil Horishin, the first Gil. And this is not arbitrarily Hagil Horishin. The reason this is Hagil Horishin because that's the only way Gil Horishin can be. That would represent, that would capture the etzem. Yesh koyach etzem. That's why it has the koyach etzem, and that's why it's called b'tzamei. Okay, to whatever extent we understand it, to some extent we understand it, we sense it. It's extremely satisfying to me that we have this insight. Once you have this insight, you'll never doubt anymore.
Rabbi Paltiel?
Yes, sir.
What is the connection between having this insight and never doubting? What is it we're never doubting?
Emunah.
What? We never doubt Emunah. And what's the connection between this insight and never doubting Emunah?
The only way to doubt Emunah is when you question it. Where does it come from? How do you know? This is not based on where it comes from and how do you know. Tzura Atzmis. Common term is, are you sure? And what do we not even say I'm sure. This is it. It's not sure. It's not like I found something out and I then decided, oh, that's the truth. I didn't find it out.
Sure, we refer to it surah.
That's right. To something that you discover. The movie is not a discovered thing. You know the expression, we never lost it? That's the moon. The moon is not something that you discover and you find. The moon you never lost. You cannot lose it. The Rebbe helps, and a person has the strength of his own insight and conviction, and then there's no shaking in the moon. All right, this will be it for this morning.
I'm sorry, my phone rang. Can we
Good morning.
do the last after the last?
morning.
Wait, right, what's a good time for tonight?
One second. Yes.
After the second Mikol Makol.
What's a good time for tonight?
1 minute. What?
After the second Mikol Makol.
What's a good time for
the last
tonight?
phrase I was.
Can you hold a second? Somebody's asking a question.
Hold on.
Hold on, you
1 second. I'm asking what's. I wasn't there for after the last Mikol Makol.
Mikol Makom lihiyois, being shezehu atzur horishein. Now this is the first surah. In other words, even though it's not a gili from the Yetz. Nevertheless, being that this is the first surah, Hainu, which means to say Hagili Horishin, the first Gili. Gili is not from the Etzem, because the Etzem does not give off Gili. The Etzem is a decided element of the Etzem, that the Gili is a decided element that's not automatic from the Etzem. Nevertheless, being that this is the first Gili, Yesh Bazek Koyach Etzem, that's why it actually contains and it brings out the Koyach of the Etzem. Yes, okay, Yehuda, what's your question?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know you were talking to me. Okay, tonight, in terms of the time, is 10 o'clock too late? What's a good time for tonight?